And let me make sure that that is the next one in the list. It is. Okay, so Andrew says, hey Folly, here's a sculpt I'm working on of an old man concept, and attached is what I'm working off of. Would love to hear your thoughts. Fantastic. Well, let's get in here and look at this old boy. Now, I'm guessing... Okay, so we just have the body. We have some limbs blocked out, but that's about it. Just some cylinders. Have you? This is so clever. You've taken a plane and added a texture of your character to it. So very quickly, if you, I don't know, I've never done this before. That's very funny. If you've never used the Spotlight tool, it's what I'm using here in ZBrush right now. You can find this under Texture and import some images, and then click on the Add to Spotlight button there. The Valentine, thank you so much for the follow, I appreciate that. But maybe check out the Spotlight tool if you've never used that before. You can use hotkeys to like toggle it on and off. You can move it around your screen. You can play with the opacity, so you can like overlay it over your character to do some proportional checks and stuff like that. Okay, so let's get in on this old boy. That sounded wrong in many ways. I'm gonna go into Transpose Master. This essentially concatenates all of our meshes into one 3D model here. We don't have any subdivision levels in the face, so that is unfortunate. What I'm gonna do here, just to show you this, how proportionally off a lot of this is in the body that you've started to block out. I would reassess your body before going forward with some of this stuff. I'm going to actually do a short tutorial on the Spotlight here. So we can scale this up and then turn down the opacity. And I'm using the Z key to toggle that little hockey puck icon there. And then Shift Z turns that on and off. So if I line up your character here, we can just kind of get a feel for the size of your head. We'll get that pretty close. There are some proportional things that we want to change in the head as well. We can just start to see that your body needs to get quite a bit more wide back here. And I know I'm breaking a lot of stuff with your head and body here, and I apologize, but we try to do, for these critiques, just some quick little changes here and there. So I would reassess some of that. In terms of proportions, let me move this back over here, scale it, and turn up the opacity again. Z to hide that. And then I'll just hop out of T-pose so that we can just look at the face. So I think you've done some good stuff here in the face, but there are some proportions that I would probably reassess in terms of just major landmarks. So let's take a look at that. I will be... Let's see, trying to find out what I can turn off there. Okay. All these buttons are separate. Let me just merge these together so that I can hide and unhide a few things easier. Okay, so let's come in here on the face. I know I warped some of this very quickly with my move brush earlier. It's fine. We'll forget about that. I think you've done a great job of creating some really cool and complex shapes here in the face. This actually reminds me of a sculpt of Benjamin Franklin that we looked at not too long ago. It might be the same 2D artist, I'm not sure. Just a few things. So one of the first things that sticks out to me, I'll even undo on, so I went back to the original just to make sure this is the original. His face shape feels a little bit more squared off on the bottom. So if we look, if I were to draw just a straight line there, pretty squared off on the bottom. It's not all that round. So you might want to reassess some of that. And then just kind of from the side view, got a lot of extra junk in here that I'm going to delete. So we don't have to deal with this as we're moving on. All right. And then, let's see, probably from the profile actually as well. I said I wouldn't say anything else about your body. but I would try to get a little bit more of a belly here, just based on how this shape is like wrapping up into the torso. So I would reassess that maybe from the profile a little bit. Again, I love how you did this. It's very clever. But again, in the face, square off that bottom portion of the chin. Mouth shape is just wrong. We want to round that out, and it looks like it's coming to a point out here. It's very kind of stylized and cartoony, so I would kind of look at that again. Try to round this mouth out a little bit more. Yours is a little kind of squared off trapezoidal shape here. So maybe reassess that, or just kind of round this out. Kind of pull in on the corners here a little bit. Get a bit more of that point. I kind of want to remesh this, just so it's easier for me to work on. Shape of the cheeks here. I'm not sure if this is accidental, but this shape is definitely just kind of a spherical shape in here, so make sure that you're paying attention to that. Shouldn't be too tough to correct. Again, for those unfamiliar, let me just do a quick remesh on this, because it's very difficult for me to work on this. So I am very quickly just going to go into my ZRemesh menu. Make sure your settings are set to the default. It looks like maybe you worked on this for Dynamesh the entire time. And I'll just do a ZRemesh at the default settings of 5K. So that'll just take all of our geometry here and lower the resolution, so it's a lot easier to work on. Alright, so I've done a quick remesh on our face, and now I'm just going to press Ctrl D and add a few projections. So we'll just project all and get some of those higher res details in there. And really, there's not too much that we need to keep, so I think we're fine with just moving forward here with our face. Okay, so I got some subdivs, so now it's so much easier for me to move this chin up. I'd also make sure that you're looking at this from the profile view. It feels like pretty squashed, I would say. Just make sure your head shape is kind of retaining all the way around. The way this is kind of going back on the collar there, I think this is going to be cut off a little bit differently than what you have. Here, I'm going to delete this. So when you pull that collar all the way back, you might want to sculpt this guy in a neutral pose as well. It might be a little bit easier, so you can use symmetry around the head. I think that might be a good idea. That's probably how I would handle the body, at least. So let's make sure that that head shape is feeling a bit more volumetric, less kind of flat. And for the jowls kind of coming down here, I'm looking at the plane of his face. I think the face can be a bit wider up here. I'm sorry for breaking stuff, it's gonna happen, it's inevitable. You need to plane out some of this a little bit more, because we don't have this like super strong zygomatic coming back. This is pretty much just a flat plane all the way up, which is what is informing to me that the face needs to be wider up here. So pay attention to those shapes there on the side. Looking at that ear, it looks like there's actually a bit of a hit from the tragus of his ear, which is actually, it looks like it's just like his cheek shape blending. So it looks like there's like maybe a bit more volume in that specific area. And what you've done here with the shape of this chin is actually the opposite of what you want to happen. Based on this, it looks like this shape is actually further or wider than what I'm seeing here. So I'm going to come here with my mask brush. We have perspective on, that's my bad. I'm just going to push in on this a little bit, pull out here, start to get some more volume, and just kind of push and pull on a lot of this to get it a little more accurate to what we're seeing in the concept. I'm just using a clay tubes brush. So hopefully you can see where I'm talking about here, how this shape is in front of the other, a little further out, I believe, based on what I'm seeing. Just trying to use a pinch brush to kind of work on that separation and kind of pull that shape out a little bit better. Feels like it's getting a little heavy-handed though, so I would probably trim some of that volume back a little. And more so just work on that separation a bit more with a maybe quick pinch or two. Again, still kind of like squared off here, so you're getting a little bit too much kind of wrap. Make sure you're looking at these extreme angles that we've already kind of mentioned a few times. This side of the face is definitely a bit more flat here. This shape kind of blends up into the cheek a bit more. You don't have this huge undercut here. I'm not really seeing that at all. If anything, maybe like down from that corner. So let's see. Maybe like from here to the corner of the mouth or something. There's like a little plane change. I think that's really about it though. This form through here feels very unrefined. What I would recommend for you actually doing is chopping off your nose and cleaning up this shape of the face, planing this out a little bit better, and then putting your nose back on. Because right now, this is just like wrapping up and into the nostrils. If we go back to this face very quick, I want you to pay attention to the same rule. This is Francisco's model that we looked at earlier, but from the nostrils down into the lip, you're going to want that plane to kind of follow down from, pointing at my own head when I got a head right in front of me, from the corner of the eye down to the chin to the upper lip. And yours is obviously exaggerated quite a bit, but it's still following the same rule. So, whoops, wrong one. So we want this all the way to that lip feeling nice and solid, whereas right now you have this kind of like flowing into the lip. So I can't really fix this quickly. It's something that's gonna have to require a fundamental change to the primary form here. And I don't wanna spend an hour going back through and fixing all that. So I would take a look at that as well. Let's see, what else really sticks out to me in this face? I think you got some of the nice expression there in the eyes. I would just push the inner corners up even more and try to get more of that curve on the bottom lid that we're seeing in the view there. His eyes are pretty tiny slits. And for the bottom shape of this lid, I would also start to round that out a bit more, because yours was a little bit elongated, a lot more than what we're seeing here. And also make sure that that feels like it's wrapping around the eye appropriately. Up top, maybe just a little bit more thin, a little bit more narrow. And then after you do all that, I would plane out the face even more, just kind of cleaning up this side from what I have. Once you get to that stage, then you can start thinking about some of the folds up here in the head. For that, I would probably just hit it with a damn standard brush at first, and just kind of carve in a little bit, and then come back through with something like a clay tubes. What I want you to focus on though, for stuff like this, for folds and for folds in this area as well, I want you to think about something called edge quality. Edge quality is essentially, for a stroke, you don't want the edge to be exactly the same all the way throughout the entire stroke. So we got a pen with sensitivity on it, so we don't want the stroke to look like this. We want it to look like something that kind of fades out towards the end and beginning. Creates a lot more interesting shape. This is also true when we're talking about kind of hard edges or areas where there are folds and transitions. So as this kind of gets towards the bottom of the shape, you probably want to fade it out a little bit. And that's something that's even happening in the 2D concept, because this person is obviously, I think, aware of this fundamental idea. Most 2D artists are, because it applies to every single stroke that they make when they're creating a line. So kind of look at that. I have the same thing kind of going on here as this edge kind of runs up. It kind of fades into the rest of the face. Some of these shapes are just, I think you got like some general warbliness to your shapes here. I'll just try to round and clean this up. Try using some ZBrush topology like I've done here. I really do think that'll help you out a lot. And joke image wow, maybe. Something like that. But thank you so much for the subscription. I really appreciate that. That's very nice of you. All right, I think that's about it on this dude. In terms of like the mustache and stuff, I would really just pay attention to how volumetric this is feeling. Really get in here and tighten up some of these transitions. Kind of see how it's twisting right here. Try to get some more of that. To do that, you can maybe use something like a mask brush and start to like move it over. Did that very quickly and roughly, but I think you get the idea. I would probably poly model, hard surface model some of the glasses here. I wouldn't do this with like Dynamesh. I think you're gonna have a bad time playing around with that. You've done a good job on capturing the silhouette and shape of this ear. I would say it's very close. There are maybe just like a couple little tweaks here that I would make to get these a little closer. Really pay attention to the angles at which these shapes are kind of pushing and pulling and turning. And maybe use something like a move brush with AccuCurve on, if you're familiar with that. AccuCurve is in the brush curve menu. You can turn it on, and it gives you a really sharp pull out for your brush. So you can maybe start to get those sharper pointed pull outs, and then you can come back through with something like a pinch brush and start to work on that plane change a little bit. For something like this, I would like pinch it and then trim it up with a trim dynamic. All right, cool. Well, hopefully that's been helpful for you. I think this is a really cool character. I think you've already done a really good job on the stuff that you've done here. If we roll back to where we started, I really don't think that, you're super far off. I think you've done a good job of capturing the feeling of the character. There are just a few things in terms of accuracy that you should work on to get a little bit closer to the original concept. All right, beautiful. Good luck to you, sir.